Hi, good morning, children. In today's class, we are going to see about the respiration in animals. In the previous class, we had a discussion about the respiration in plants and also the definition for the respiration. And in today's class, we are going to see about the respiration in animal. Right. The different animal possess different types of surfaces for the gaseous exchange. Actually, different animal, it possesses a different sort of a respiratory process. You just imagine, in case of the terrestrial animal, we can breathe the oxygen in the atmosphere which is present. But in case of the animal that live in the water, need to use only the dissolved oxygen which is present in the water. So that in case of the aquatic animals, it has to do the respiration much faster than that of the terrestrial animal. This is because, the oxygen which is present in the atmosphere is more than that of the dissolved oxygen which is present in the water. Now, in this tabulation, it is clearly given the different animal have different modes of respiration. Can you see this? Yes. So these are all some of the common types of respiration. Now I'm going to list it out. Right. The unicellular animals like amoeba and planaria uses the respiratory organ as a cell membrane, and the type of respiration it undergo is diffusion. Number 2 is the cutaneous respiration. So from the name it is very clear. Cutaneous, it shows that the respiration takes place through the skin, and a good example for that is earthworm. And third one is a branchial respiration, and it undergoes through the respiratory organ called as gills. And the aquatic animals like fish and prawn, it undergoes the bronchial respiration. And the fourth type is the tracheal respiration. So this type of respiration takes place in the insects like grasshopper and cockroach through the respiratory organ called as spiracles and trachea. And the last type is a pulmonary respiration, which we can find commonly in the human beings and also like birds, the land animals. Right, it uses the respiratory organ as lungs. Now we are going to see about the special type of respiratory organ. Actually, in the previous tabulation, I showed the usual respiratory system, respiration types, but in some animals, a special respiratory organ also possesses. We will see that. The example is like a scorpion and spider. It uses the book lung as a respiratory organ. Number 2, limulus. It uses book gills as its respiratory organ. Snail uses the pulmonary sac. And the last, the bony fishes, it uses lateral gill slit as its respiratory organ. Right. All the respiratory organs have 3 common features. We should know that usually even a different type of respiratory organs, even if it is involves also, but it should contain these 3 common features. Number 1, it should possess a large surface area to get enough oxygen. And number 2, it should possess a very thin wall so that the diffusion may take place very easily. So number 1 is it possesses large surface area. Number 2, it should possess a very thin wall. The respiratory organ should be a very thin wall and easy for the diffusion and exchange of respiratory gases. And the last one, it should have a rich supply, blood supply for the transporting the respiratory gases. These are the 3 major features it should possess. Number 1, it possesses large surface area for the exchange of gases. Number 2, the respiratory organ should be very thin wall for the easy diffusion. And the third one, it should possess a large supply of blood. Now we are going to see. So till now what we have discussed is the respiration, how it takes place in different types of animal with a different respiratory organ. Now we are going to see about the respiration, how it takes place in case of the human being. Right. It consists of a group of organ. In the previous class itself, I actually informed you that the respiration in case of the human being takes place with a group of organs and the tissues that help us for the breathe. Even a different types of organs that is involved for the respiratory system. Here, the lung, which act as a primary organ, the lung which acts as a primary organ for the respiratory system. This image shows the human respiratory system. Can you see the numbers 1, 2, 3, the sequence the same way? You just imagine the number 1 in the respiratory system involves with the nasal cavity, followed by pharynx and then larynx, and the fourth one is trachea, followed by bronchi, and then lungs towards is the alveoli, and at the last it enters into the heart. Now, the features of the human respiratory system. Actually, about this slide, I think like we had a discussion, we had the discussion in the previous class, that is what is the respiration. So with the help of the inhaled oxygen, how the glucose breaks down and it yields the energy in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate molecule. Now we are going to see little detail about what are the parts which involved in the respiratory system and its functions. Number 1 is nose. Yeah, it is. Everyone knows that. Nose. Once if you speak about the nose, you should know actually the exterior, we can find the nostrils, a couple of nostrils, and which has been divided with the help of a septum, so that we can find the left and the right nostril. Because of the septum, it divides the left and the right nostril. And inside the nostrils, you can find the hair follicles. That hair follicles have a 2 major functions. Number 1, it acts as a first line defense against the foreign pathogen. It will filter the foreign pathogen once if it enters into the nose. Right. So it acts as a first line defense mechanism. And number 2, it also provides humidity for the inhaled air. So this is the 2 major function of the hair follicle which is present in the nose. The next, so first starts with the nasal cavity, that is nose, and then followed by pharynx. In this case, you can find the nasal chamber immediately that opens into a wide hollow space which is termed called as pharynx. It is very clear in the image. It is a common path. The pharynx, which we can say that it acts as a common path for the food and also for the air. It functions by preventing the entry of the food particles into the windpipe. So I hope that you can remember that in the digestion class we already had a discussion about the epiglottis. The same thing I would like to say now. The epiglottis is an elastic cartilage which serves as a switch between the larynx and the esophagus by allowing the passage of the air into the airway to the lungs and also food into the gastrointestinal tract. Are you clear? So the epiglottis only will differentiate, or else it will switch, act as a switch, so that the air will be enters into the airway and food maybe enters into the gastrointestinal tract. Yeah, because of that only, even while taking our food, in case if you speak, if you talk, you may feel that coughing. It results in coughing. The reason behind this reaction is because of the epiglottis. It is forced to open the air to exit outwards and the food to enters into the windpipe. This triggers a cough. Right, children? Till now, we had a discussion about the number 1 under the respiratory system. The first one we saw what is nose and followed by pharynx. And now we are going to see about the larynx. About the larynx, the major thing what I want to say is it is also called as an Adam's apple, and also it is also called as a voice box. You may know very well larynx, it is called as a voice box. Next to the pharynx immediately we can find the larynx. From the picture I think you can find the part where it is larynx. It is the portion which rises and falls during the swallowing of the food particle. In case after taking the food, if you swallow the food, you can realize that the portion which get rises, that is called as a larynx. It generates a sound as air passes through the hollow. Next is the trachea. So, number 1, nose. Number 2, pharynx. Number 3, larynx. Now we are going to see about trachea. The trachea, it is also called as a windpipe that rises below the larynx and move down to the neck. Very important one mark is the walls of the trachea. Can you see the picture here? The trachea, what shape is that? It is a C-shaped cartilaginous ring which gives a hardness to the trachea and maintain it completely by expanding. The trachea extends and split into 2 bronchi, one for each lungs. Right? So the trachea, it is also called as a windpipe. We can find next towards the larynx. And if you see the trachea, you can see the C-shaped cartilaginous ring. Right? The next part we are going to see is about the bronchi. The trachea splits into 2 tubes termed as a bronchi, which enters each lungs individually. The bronchi are divided into secondary, tertiary, and also the bronchioles, which is again further divided into a small air-like sac, which is called as an alveoli. Right? So, from the trachea, it divides into 2 bronchi, and this bronchi enters into the lungs. Each bronchi enters into the each lungs, and the bronchi is further divided into further branches like secondary and tertiary, and then the final small air-like sac, which is called as an alveoli. And this alveoli is very, very important because where the exchange of gases may take place. Exchange of gases in the sense the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules takes place in the alveoli. Now, we enter into the last one, which is the preliminary organ, which is seen in the respiratory organ, which is called as the lungs. Lungs are the chief centers of the respiration in the humans and other vertebrates. They are located in the thoracic cavity of the chest near the backbone and on either side of the heart. Again, I'll repeat. It is located in the thoracic cavity of the chest near the backbone and also on either side of the heart. Each lung is enclosed by a double wall membrane formed fluid-filled sac, which is called as a pleural sac. They are a pair of large spongy organs mainly involved in the exchange of gases between the blood and the air. Compared to the left lung, the right lung always it is quite bigger and heavier. Okay, children? So, lungs are the chief center of the respiration, and it has been located in the thoracic cavity of the chest near the backbone, either side of the heart. And the very, very important point is what is pleural sac. Pleural sac, it is nothing. The double wall membrane formed a fluid filled sac, which is called as a pleural sac. Right? Now we come to the last slide of this presentation. So the summarization of the respiratory system which is present in the human being. So again, I would like to repeat everything. Number 1 is a nostril, intake of air. And also one more thing that we find is, it possesses a hair follicle, and then the hair follicle acts as a defense, first line of defense mechanism, and also provide moisture. And the next is the pharynx. It is a passage, the nasal chamber, behind the nasal chamber, and serves as a common passage for both air and food. Larynx, it is called as a voice box or sound box, right? And as I already said that, while swallowing the intaken food, we can find the organ which has been raised, which is called as a larynx. Next is the epiglottis. It is a flap-like structure that covers the glottis and prevents the entry of food into the windpipe. trachea. It is a long tube passing through the mid-thoracic cavity. And very important one marker, C-shaped cartilaginous ring we can find in the trachea. The next is the bronchi. The trachea divides into the left and the right bronchi. Bronchioles. Each bronchus is further divided into a finer channel known as a bronchioles. Alveoli, student, it is a balloon-like structure which we can find in the bronchioles, which is called as an alveoli, used for exchange of gases. Lungs, we have the pair of lungs which are sac-like structure and covered by a double membrane known as a pleura. Children, I hope really you got a very good understanding about this topic, respiration in animal. So we will meet with the next presentation in the next class. Until then, thank you.